Nigel Farage represents the views and tells the truth that unfortunately our politicians seem unable to do. And unfortunately, the attitude is very often to shoot the messenger. And in many ways, he's been shot at for no good reason at all. His words twisted, accused of numerous distasteful thoughts.
A good time in light of lots of conversations about Nigel Farage recently. It feels apt, really, to talk about the beginnings of the Brexit Party. The Reform Party might not have picked up many votes in last week's by-elections. But 4 years ago, if you cast your mind back, for the Brexit Party, it was very different. It was the 2019 European elections. They topped the poll both in terms of seats and vote share, winning 30%. That's despite the party having been formed from scratch only weeks earlier. My next guest has chronicled this remarkable political story in a new book. It's called How to Start a Political Party and Why You Probably Shouldn't. He's Andrew Reid, and he joins us now on Times Radio. Good evening.
Good evening. Nice to speak to you.
Very nice to speak to you too. What was your role initially, first of all, in all this, in terms of witnessing what was happening with the Brexit Party? Where was your viewpoint?
Well, I was there right from the beginning. In fact, I was on holiday and I got a phone call from Nigel saying, would I help Catherine Blakelock with the Electoral Commission, because I had experience of dealing with them from my days when I was National Treasurer of UKIP, which was a title Nigel wanted me to have, even though I didn't feel I needed a title. I think most people knew I was a close advisor and in many ways his eyes and ears.
And was the party launched specifically to try and take as large a gain as possible across those 70 seats available or across the seats available in the European elections?
Yes, but this was the party that no one saw was coming. Nigel had worked out that Barnier was not going to allow us to leave on a no-deal basis and would extend the time. When that happened, of course, the opportunity then came to be able to mount a European election campaign.
And it was all done. You referenced Michel Barnier there, of course, who was who was a name that we were discussing and mentioning an awful lot a few years ago. Was the European Commission's head of task force for relations with the United Kingdom, all involved with the Brexit deal, of course. So you were basically, among others, not you specifically, but it was mobilised incredibly quickly, the Brexit Party. And by all accounts, was quite chaotic in parts. And I know you talk about this in the book. Give us some anecdotes here. Doing anything quickly is always tricky. But what kind of chaos ensued?
Well, we can go to the question of even getting a bank account. Long before the latest edition of this nonsense that's been going on and developing within our society, we couldn't get a bank account. And we had a lot of problems because we had money coming in, vast amounts of money coming in from people across the entire political spectrum, because this was not it was a party open to everyone who felt that Brexit was best for the country.
And you had great problems setting up a bank account, as you said, and you're referencing, of course, Nigel Farage having his Coots account closed, and the all of the press headlines afterwards, the BBC being misinformed by the head of NatWest, Dame Alison Rose, Nigel Farage being able to get a dossier on exactly why his account was closed, and the question of banks closing accounts for political reasons. I assume the party eventually got a bank account. Tell me about what else was involved in mobilising this cause and this party in the very short amount of time that you had in order to get it ready for those European elections.
Well, one has to start, first of all, to have a party, you need a leader, you need a treasurer, you need a nominating officer. We had to learn the mistakes of UKIP. And there were mistakes, because we would get someone who was completely opposite to what UKIP stood for, was demonstrating extreme right views, and then immediately the press would label UKIP with that person. So we started off by saying, we're not going to have a party the way parties are normally organized. We're going to have supporters, not members. And this was something that we produced. And I think somewhat was a new concept, because this way we weren't going to be diverted by people who were not of our open way of thinking.
Okay. I do remember at the time, like all political parties really, there being a tour right up to the eve of those elections. And I remember reporting on, it was London's Olympia, wasn't it?
That's right.
There was a huge rally, a sold out rally actually, 3,000 odd people there from recollection. It was a huge event. And I remember as well, the popularity of Nigel Farage. He was a figure that people liked, very likeable, charming guy, really. And people really subscribed to what Nigel Farage was about. And I remember them chanting, Nigel, Nigel. It was sort of Corbyn-esque style adoration. Was there ever a concern that Nigel Farage would become bigger than the party, too big for the party?
I think the position is Nigel Farage represents the views and tells the truth that unfortunately our politicians seem unable to do. And unfortunately, the attitude is very often to shoot the messenger. And in many ways, he's been shot at for no good reason at all. His words twisted, accused of numerous distasteful thoughts, such as.
But at that time, he was completely revered by supporters of the Brexit Party. He was probably the reason why the party won so many seats. He was an enigmatic guy.
You are right.
Yeah,
there's no question about that. I mean,
and I ever wonder whether there were discussions about that popularity eclipsing the message of the party. One man can't be bigger than the party itself.
Well, no, that's not the case, because the message of the party was always there. The man who delivered the message is the man who probably has still within this country a following of probably just under 5 million people who believe that he is a force for good, and he leads and selects the right people to be able to deliver that. So it's very easy to sort of to state, he's the only person there. No, he wasn't the only person there for obvious reasons.
Yeah. I know that. I was just wondering whether there was a concern that he would eclipse what the party was for.
No.
To a negative point, really, but no, okay. Well, look, our time has sadly come to an end. It was, of course, a very successful run at the European elections. Those seats became obsolete, of course, when they had to be sort of taken off the list, deregistered when the UK left Brexit, and there was an ensuing general election that wasn't quite so successful for the party. But the insight into how to create a political party in a short amount of time is covered in your book, and there are some very, very fascinating anecdotes and stories in there. There certainly are. Thank you so much for speaking to us, Andrew Reid, who is one of the authors of The Art of the Impossible: How to Start a Political Party and Why You Probably Shouldn't.